Yes. Good morning once again. Looks like the number is still stuck at 16. It's not going up. So I'm sure some people will join in later. So I would like to welcome you to this last in the series of presentations on module 3, which is on clean cooling, which was influenced or informed by the development of maps for cooling appliances that we did under the EELA project. As a disclaimer, I would like to say that the presentation was made by Bettina Schreck, who at that time used to work for the UNIDO at the Montreal Protocol Division, but has since left a couple of months ago. So I was trying to understand her slides, doing the presentation, ideally on her behalf. And I hope I won't get difficult questions that I will fail to answer. So we move ahead. So the presentation is on the Montreal Protocol, as well as the Kigali Amendment. It's the block 7, which is the last one in the clean cooling module 3. And it's intended for the general audience. So in terms of the presentation outline, we will start with the Montreal Protocol itself, and then look at the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol, and then look at the policies to promote efficiency in the cooling sector, as well as to promote natural refrigerants, looking at regulation, physical incentives, as well as capacity building and awareness raising. In terms of natural refrigerants, I think this was covered extensively in the previous presentation we had before, which was looking at refrigerant types and their properties. In terms of learning objectives, ideally it's to describe the Montreal Protocol, its amendments and synergies on energy efficiency in terms of room air conditioners as well as refrigerators. I would like to mention as we go ahead, there's simultaneous interpretation on the platform from English into French and from English into Portuguese and vice versa. So you can choose the language that you are most comfortable to listen to the presentation. So we start with the ABC of the ozone depletion. We see that the ozone layer depletion refers to the destruction of the ozone molecules by ozone depleting substances. I think we have a layer that is shown in deep blue. What is shown in yellow is the sun, and the rays from the sun strike the earth. Some of them reach the earth, others are blocked within the ozone layer. So the ozone depleting substances are substances that were commonly used in products such as refrigerators, air conditioners, fire extinguishers, and aerosols. So when the ozone depleting substances reach the stratosphere, they break down the ozone molecules due to the chain reaction described below. As a result, the number of ozone molecules above a single point on the planet is reduced, and the protection that the ozone layer provides against ultraviolet radiation decreases. So chlorofluorocarbons were the first ozone depleting substances that were identified for their potential impact on the ozone layer. The ozone depletion, or the depletion of the ozone layer, and climate change are two separate problems with different underlying mechanisms. And both of these environmental problems are related to the atmosphere and are interconnected. There are various, I think, other conventions that relate to the climate change and ozone depletion. And one of them is the Vienna Convention. And this one, since the impact of stopping the use of ozone depleting substances affects all countries across the world, a regime would likely only work if it's global in scope. So in order to achieve global adherence to the treaty, the interests of all different countries had to be reconciled during the negotiation process. This began in 1982, and in 1985, the Vienna Convention for the Protection of the Ozone Layer was adopted, and it entered into force in 1988. By 2009, there was universal ratification of the Montreal Protocol. So the main obligations of the Vienna Convention is to take appropriate measures against adverse effects of human and man-made ozone depletion, which include one, the adoption of legislative and administrative measures, then cooperation on research and scientific assessment, information exchange, as well as development and transfer of technology from the advanced to the less advanced countries, so that we are on the same slate. We come to the Montreal Protocol itself, and to describe it, the Montreal Protocol is a global agreement to protect the stratospheric ozone layer by phasing out the production and consumption of ozone depleting substances. It's a framework emphasizing information sharing and scientific research. It's a separate protocol with a set of timelines and targets for phasing out ozone depleting substances. So in terms of its creation, it was mooted in 1987, and then it entered into force in 1989. And by 2014, we had universal ratification of the protocol. In terms of the obligations of the Montreal Protocol, one, it's setting targets for the ozone depletion substances. It's a milestone in the international environmental law. It looks at reporting on the consumption and production of this ODS. Looks at trade control through mandatory export and import licensing system, and as well as having special provisions for developing countries in terms of financial as well as technical incentives. So far, I think 5 amendments have been made to add to the protocol obligations, such as new controlled substances since the ratification, which include the London Amendment, Copenhagen Amendment, Montreal Amendment, as well as Beijing and Kigali Amendment. So member states adopted the Montreal Protocol on 16 September 1987, a date that has been annually commemorated since 2000 as the International Day for Preservation of the Ozone Layer, otherwise known as the World Ozone Day. Like I mentioned, the protocol entered into force in 1989 and achieved universal ratification in 2009. And in 2014, 5 subsequent amendments to the protocol have also achieved universal ratification. In terms of, I think, achievements, we have, I think, so far witnessed the disbursement of about 4 billion in grant funding. 9,321 projects have been approved, and 144 developing countries have been assisted. There has also been scientific evidence of the ozone hole, I think, shrinking. Measurements show that the decline in the chlorine resulting from an international ban on chlorine containing man-made chemicals called chlorofluorocarbons has resulted in 20% less ozone depletion during the Antarctic winter than there was in 2005. I have a video here which is supporting this depletion. I hope it's going to play. Please tell me if you are able to see the video. Divuo?
Not yet ready.
Not yet.
Not yet?
No,
Okay. Let me.
you maybe have to shift screen or something.
Yeah, because it's just a slide itself frozen.
Are you able to see it now?
The Montreal Protocol has been a
Yeah,
great
now it works.
Make it large.
in
Hello?
expanding the
Make it large.
Is it large?
Yes, it works.
Okay.
reduction of ozone
And the sound?
substances. And we
Yeah,
know this
we
because
hear.
we've been measuring those substances at the Earth's surface since the 1980s or even before in some cases. So before the Montreal Protocol, ozone depleting substances at the surface were going up rapidly. Once the protocol was signed and the regulations went into effect, we saw at the surface levels of ozone depleting substances going down. And so that's great. But those substances have to get up into the stratosphere before they can destroy ozone, and they have to break down high up in the stratosphere. And the chlorine that gets released from the chlorofluorocarbons, that's what actually destroys ozone. What we haven't had up until now is any measurement inside the Antarctic ozone hole that the chlorine levels there is actually going down. What I've shown is that if you're very careful about when you measure hydrogen chloride, that's HCl, in the atmosphere, and you measure it over time, you can see that HCl, so that reactive chlorine that destroys ozone, those levels are actually going down inside the Antarctic ozone hole. So that's great. So that's part of saying, hey, the ozone hole's recovering, it's getting smaller, and it's because of declining chlorine. But the other part is to also look at how much ozone depletion is going on at the same time, because ozone levels can vary for a lot of different reasons, mostly because of temperature. If 1 year it's warm, you don't have as much ozone depletion. 1 year it's really cold, you have more ozone depletion. So it makes it really hard to see the signal that the atmosphere is showing us this ozone hole really recovering. So what we did in this study, we were able to look at ozone changes during a period of time in the winter when most of that ozone change is coming just from chemical changes, so that temperatures aren't really affecting it very much. And we're able to do this because of measurements from the NASA Aura instrument called the microwave limb sounder. So what we've seen by using the MLS data is that ozone depletion has declined. It does vary a lot still, but it declines, and it's declining sort of in step with the chlorine changes. And so that's what we're excited about, is that we see for the first time, chlorine levels are definitely going down and ozone levels are responding to it.
Yeah, just a minute, we get back to our presentation. We are almost there. Tell me you are able to see it in presentation mode.
It's not in presentation mode, but yeah, now it is. Yeah, you can continue.
Okay, thanks. Now we continue. So we come now to the Kigali Amendment, which addresses the climate change concern. So the Kigali Amendment to the Montreal Protocol is an international agreement to gradually reduce the consumption and production of hydrofluorocarbons. So concerns have been raised by some parties about substituting the ozone-depleting substances with alternatives such as hydrofluorocarbons, the low ozone depleting power, but that have high global warming potential. So in 2016, it was agreed to include HFC's abatement in the Montreal Protocol activities. Climate action was addressed in a broader way, and the mitigation potential of the controlled sector included 20% from the HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, as well as 80% from energy efficiency in the refrigeration and air conditioning sector. So the main goals of the Kigali Amendment is a stepwise reduction of the HFCs, hydrofluorocarbons, starting in 2014. Made a mistake there. In 2014, then phasing down of the HFCs could avoid warming of up to 0.5 degrees C by 2100. So the amendment was adopted in 2016 and came into force into 2019. By 2044 April this year, 157 states signed, including the European Union, have ratified the Kigali Amendment. So by 2045, we expect, which is the target year for 80% reduction of these HFCs, looking at a baseline of 2020 to 2022. So in terms of coming back home, what has been done in the East African community and the Southern African Development Community under the Energy Efficient Lighting and Appliances Project, and working together with UNEP, United for Efficiency. There was a study that was done on the refrigerating and air conditioning appliances for both of them being at household level. And there was some findings that reviewed that looking at 2020 to 2040, if we do business as usual, that is not implementing any MEPs on these two appliances, the air conditioners and the refrigerators, we are likely to have a growth in terms of electricity consumption related to air conditioning of up to 151%, and that of refrigerators of up to 121%. But by implementing minimum energy performance standards, we can cap this increase in energy consumption to only 94% in relation to the room air conditioners, as well as 68% in relation to the household refrigerators. If, on the other hand, we did implement the higher energy efficiency performance standards, then we could cap this increase from, say, 151 to only 45% for the ACs, and from 121 to only 6% for the household refrigerators. And also just looking at the minimum ambition, which is the minimum energy performance standards, by 2040, we are likely to save, if these MEPs are implemented, in terms of electricity savings, 4 terawatt hours annually for ACs and 6 terawatt hours annually for the household refrigerators, which is equivalent to setting up a large power station of 500 megawatt capacity. This is a virtual power station. In case of ACs, 2 power stations, and in case of refrigerators, more than 2 power stations. This is equivalent also to avoiding carbon dioxide emissions of up to about 3.4 million tons for ACs and 4 million tons for refrigerators. In terms of monetary savings, we stand a chance of saving up to about $500 million US in electricity bills for ACs and $0.7 billion US in terms of household refrigerators and air conditioners. So this is the timeline for phase out of the hydrofluorocarbons as far as the Kigali amendment to the Montreal Protocol is concerned, which looks at phasing out of these HFCs, the strong greenhouse gases widely used in electronics and air conditioners. So starting from about 2013, thereabout, we see, I think, in terms of HFC freeze and phase out for the Article 5 countries. I think countries are grouped according to maybe their GDP and income levels, where Group 1 is the majority of the parties to the Kigali Amendment. Group 2 is Bahrain, India, Iran, Iraq, Kuwait, Oman, Pakistan, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and United Arab Emirates. Then we have the Group non-Article 5 early start, most of the Article 5 countries, and then non-Article 5 later start countries, including Belarus, the Russian Federation, Kyrgyzstan, Tajikistan, and Uzbekistan. So that is the timeline, and we expect that by 2045, I think most of the HFCs would have been phased out, with the latest timeline being 2047. Now we look at energy efficiency as regards the Kigali Amendment. So replacing hydrofluorocarbons creates an opportunity to increase the energy efficiency of cooling equipment by 10 to 50%, significantly reducing the energy costs to consumers and businesses. A dedicated funding window under the multilateral funding is available, and 20 million was available in 2023, and then additional activities on energy efficiency for selected countries which have low volume consumption of refrigerants. I think this is the support that was given to these countries. We'll see in the further slide. I think it is explained well. So the fund's objective is to provide financial and technical assistance to developing country parties to the Montreal Protocol, whose annual per capita consumption and production of the ozone depleting substances is less than 0.3 kilograms to comply with the control measures of the protocol. So for the room air conditioners as well as refrigerators, we see that like any other appliance in this case, implementing minimum energy performance standards as well as doing a standards and labels programs helps to shift the market from inefficient products to efficient products as part of the policies, I think, to transform markets in the uptake of refrigerating appliances and air conditioners. Sorry, we looked at this already. Let's skip this one. So in terms of the requirements in the MEPs that we set up for the refrigerating appliances, as well as the room air conditioners. We see that for room air conditioners, which we looked at both self-contained and portable ones, as well as split ductless split air conditioners. The requirement in the maps that we have developed under the EELA project states that for the global warming potential for self-contained and portable ACs, we limit it to 150, and for ductless split ACs, we limit it to 750. In terms of ozone depleting potential, the requirement in the standard is 0 for both the self-contained and portable, as well as the ductless ACs. For refrigerating appliances, looking at all types, which is the refrigerator or the freezer or refrigerator freezer, the global warming potential is capped at 20, whereas the ozone depleting potential in the standard is also capped at 0. So that is the requirement in the standards that we have developed under the EELA project for air conditioners and refrigerators. We see, however, that there are barriers to the implementation of energy efficiency measures as regards ACs and refrigerators, and these will categorize them, I think, according to the actors. We start by institutions and the barrier which is there. One of them is in terms of information. And the description here is that lack of reliable and clear indication of room air conditioner, refrigerating and air conditioners energy performance. In terms of the tariff distortion, once you are connected to the grid, we see that subsidized electricity tariff distorts the market, causing energy efficiency to be undervalued. For consumers, when we look at the information barrier, there is lack of understanding of energy efficiency benefits in most cases, and lack of information about the value of equipment and energy performance, as well as uncertainties about energy savings. Energy savings are not directly measurable, but can only be inferred. Consumers also do not recognize the need to manage energy use and are unaware of where and how they spend the energy for the refrigerators and air conditioners. In terms of affordability, this is one barrier. We see that there are high upfront costs for energy efficiency appliances in terms of refrigerators and air conditioners. And then the principal agent problem is that this barrier occurs when people who are purchasing the refrigerators as well as air conditioners are not the ones paying for the electricity to operate them. This is mostly frequent in rented homes. If we look at the manufacturers and retailers, one barrier in terms of availability of products is that lack of energy efficiency products is obtaining on the market, and then lack of available capital for investment in the production upgrades. For the perception barrier, energy efficiency projects are considered high risk by financial institutions, and especially that energy efficiency projects tend to be small in nature. It's very difficult to acquire financing for them. That's why there's need, I think, to aggregate these through maybe a super ESCO, and then we can have the small ESCOs now tapping into the projects that have been aggregated by the super ESCO to be presented to the financing institutions for funding to be, for the projects to be implemented. In terms of technical barriers, there's a large gap in technical capacity to produce efficient equipment, especially in developing countries, and there are little incentives to encourage local manufacturing to produce efficient products. In terms of national cooling actions that promote energy efficiency, we looked at this slide earlier. I think minimum energy performance standards together with the labels help to push markets to the larger uptake of energy efficiency products. And then the changes to energy building codes also encourages energy efficiency in the building sector. And then financial and physical incentives for energy efficiency also promotes climate-friendly equipment, and then promotion of green building certification, as well as good operation and management practices, especially for large power users. Also, awareness raising and training activities are here. I think maybe someone has switched on their mic. I don't know if it's a question. Coming back to the multilateral fund that I spoke about, we look at its role and how it helps, I think, funding in terms of reducing the ozone depleting substances. The multilateral fund is dedicated to reversing the deterioration of the Earth's ozone layer. It was established by a decision of the second meeting of the parties to the Montreal Protocol in June 1990 in London and began its operation in 1991. The main objective of the fund is to assist developing countries and parties to the Montreal Protocol whose annual level of consumption of ozone depleting substances, which are the CFCs and halons, is less than 23 kilograms per capita, to comply with the control measures of the protocol. Currently, 147 of the 997 parties to the Montreal Protocol meet these criteria. These are referred to as Article 5 countries. The Multilateral Fund is managed by an executive committee with equal membership from developed and developing countries. Since inception of the fund, the executive committee has held 94 meetings. The fund secretariat is located in Montreal, assists the executive committee in its tasks. Projects and activities supported by the fund are implemented by 4 international implementing agencies and a few bilateral agencies. On 27 October 2023, the 35th meeting of the parties to the Montreal Protocol decided on the replenishment of the multilateral fund for the triennium 2024 to 2026. The parties agreed on a budget of 965 million, which is a record amount. As at 8 November 2023, the contribution received by the fund from developed countries or non-Article 5 countries totaled over 4.7 billion. The fund has also received additional voluntary contributions amounting to 25.5 million from a group of donor countries to finance fast-starting activities for the implementation of the HFC phase down. To facilitate the phase down by Article 5 countries, the Executive Committee has approved 144 country programs, 144 HCFC phase-out management plans, 24 Kigali HFC implementation plans, and pilot projects to maintain and enhance energy efficiency in the context of HFC phase down, and has funded the establishment and operating costs of ozone offices in 145 Article 5 countries. Further information on the role of the multilateral fund is that the replacement of the controlled refrigerants with low global warming potential alternatives, such as natural refrigerants, is supported through the multilateral fund for the implementation of the Montreal Protocol. And the fund enables the compliance of developing countries with the Montreal Protocol, targets supporting, for example, investments in manufacturing and capacity building in the after-sales sector, as well as in national institutions that support the phase down. The fund also provides the funds for developing countries with eligible consumption of controlled substances. The funding amount is evaluated based on incremental investment costs, calculations, and includes, to some extent, associated non-investment costs such as transaction costs. Core benefits such as technology upgrades are mandatory and only considered on a case-by-case basis. For example, in the case of a demonstration event. Kindly mute your mic.
Can you mute? I think it's Gustav.
Asteria, you can assist in muting.
Merci.
RAC manufacturers or
Thank you,
of substances other than HFCs are not eligible for funding for the multilateral funding. Financial and technical assistance by the multilateral fund is generally provided in the form of grants and is delivered primarily through 4 international implementing agencies, which includes UNEP, UNDP, UNIDO, and the World Bank. The Multilateral Fund's Governing Executive Committee agreed that in addition to HCFC phase-out activities, the fund will also fund a list of initial enabling activities to support the preparation for the implementation of HFC phase-down, including support of countries for any Kigali Amendment ratification work on institutional arrangements and data reporting on the production of HFC as well as its consumption. In terms of capacity building, so far, training and certification of refrigeration technicians conducted in Article 5 countries has focused on containment of chlorofluorocarbons and hydrochlorofluorocarbons and retrofitting with hydrofluorocarbons as their primary replacement. Natural refrigerants, including ammonia, hydrocarbons, and carbon dioxide, or low global warming and saturated HFCs, were only presented at the general level since the focus of the refrigerant management plans, terminal phase-out management plans, and HFC phase-out management plans was first on the CFC's phase-out and later on HCFC's phase-out. So proper management of those two groups of refrigerants was essential. Once the HFC phase-down schedule for Article 5 countries were introduced in 2016 through the Kigali Amendment, the situation changed and new training and certification programs need to be designed as part of the HFC phase-down related projects in order to train refrigeration technicians on the use of alternative technologies as well as on HFC containment. Only a few Article 5 countries have started the process of adjusting national legislation according to the new Montreal provisions related to HFCs and adopting relevant administrative, legal, and institutional measures accordingly. Appropriate training of refrigeration technicians will ensure the proper management of HFCs, alternatives, as well as HFC containment, and thus facilitate compliance with the Montreal Protocol. It is important that sustainability of training results is ensured through inclusion of training courses on HFC replacement technologies in the local training system curriculum in technical school teaching programs. And last slide, I think, is on awareness raising. Awareness raising of stakeholders should be part of any HFC phase-down strategy, but the question is how it should be structured to achieve its goal at minimum cost. The selection of the most appropriate approach depends on country-specific, such as size of the country, the sectors where HFCs are used, whether only major stakeholders groups are targeted or also the general public, that is technical schools, etc. Since most of Article 5 countries have already created public awareness as part of their HCFC phase-out programs, the awareness raising activities related to HFC's phase-down may initially target the same specific stakeholders, such as importers, exporters, dealers, and users of HFCs, servicing companies, equipment owners and producers, importers and exporters of HFCs containing products or equipment. These groups should be made aware of the HFC phase-down schedule and any upcoming legislative policies in the country and their planned implementation schedule, as well as the available and emerging alternative technologies. Some stakeholders may be grouped together, such as those in brackets, and might be addressed through similar awareness raising measures. So, conclusion, I think a well-designed awareness raising communication can improve preparedness of stakeholders to appreciate the value of training on the alternatives and good practices that can follow.